Okay, so let's get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Play Creators Conference. So let's just start with some intros. I'm Trina McFarland at TinkerTini, and I'll be chairing this panel.
Hey, Trina.
Who else do you have?
I'm Phil Neal at Go Products in San Francisco.
I'm Fee from Making Things in the UK.
I'm Adam from Creating Unique Toys in California.
Excellent. So here we all are to talk about life as a solo inventor. So I'm super curious to ask you guys some questions and hear all about what life is like for you. As long as I've known you guys, it never surprises me. Like, I just keep learning more and more questions I ask and learn about what your experience is. It's really insightful. So let's get started. So the first question, what was your history in the toy space before you went solo, and what prompted the move? Anyone want to take that one?
Go on, Phil.
Go ahead, Adam.
No, go on, Phil, go for it.
Well, I was working with KID for like 5 years, and I was in 9/11 happened actually, and I had a young kid, and I had an understanding wife, and so it just felt like at that moment that there was, I wanted to try. I'd been working in the business of inventing for years, and it just wanted to give it a shot on my own. Give it a try, and fail or succeed. It could have gone either way.
How long, Phil? How long was that transition from when you left more of a firm agency structure to break out on your own? Like, how long did it take you to kind of get momentum and get traction? And
a while. And so I had a finite amount of money, I had a finite amount of time, and knew that I could always rejoin a firm, or I assumed I could rejoin a firm if it didn't work out. And I ran into Shake and Go, actually. That one product changed my fortunes. It turned out to be a pretty good thing, and gave me some security, because it's a very insecure business, right? Like, we're all in the speculation business. So it's.
How long did it take, Phil? How long did it take?
I would say it took about 2 years before, and I was doing a lot of. So what a lot of independents do when they go out is they do consulting work, and you patch it together.
Oh, right.
You make ends meet with whatever means, but there's a opportunity cost to doing too much consulting, where you can't build up your inventories, and it's how many ideas can you come up with. So anyway,
that's not bad. It took you 2 years from breaking on your own to have Shake and Go. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Running pretty lean for a little while there. Yeah.
So how about you, Adam?
So how did I get into it? Or what was it? The early years.
Yeah. So what were you doing before, and then how did you transition into inventing solo? Like, how did that happen for you?
So I got into the toy industry by visiting a toy fair, the toy fair in London, and then just literally just going around to every toy company pitching myself. I had my portfolio, literally a physical portfolio, no iPads, and I literally just walked around to every single stand, not really knowing anyone, and just basically just saying, "Here I am. Can I speak to your most important person?" And out of that, I got 2 job offers. I ended up working at Mucky Toys in the UK, who make swing ball. And then I also did an internship over at Little Tykes in Ohio. And then basically I decided and came back after about 3 or 4 years. I realized that invention was a thing, and it just seemed like so much freedom to be able to do and make whatever you want. I did get a lot of freedom at those 2 companies, actually, to make original stuff, which is great. But being an inventor, you can work in any category you choose, or at least any category you can sell in, which is another thing. But yeah, that's how I got started.
Okay. And how long was the ramp up for you? So Phil had about 2 years of struggle and
Oh,
strife? How
yeah.
long was it for you before you hit? And what
So
was your first hit? Was it the flush?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
what?
it was Flush and Frenzy, but so it took me about 9 months to get my first deal. So yeah, I mean up to that, it's a lot of freelance work. I was lucky enough to work for some, you know, Hasbro and stuff like that, Hasbro games, freelance work. But yeah, it took 9 months to get the first one. But I actually, once you get that first deal, it's like, you know, you kind of celebrate and you think this is brilliant, and then you wait another 6 to 9 months, and then it doesn't come out on the market, and then it happened 9 times until I actually got one that came out on the market. So there's a lot of like up and down of emotions, just like you think you've done it, and then it doesn't happen for like so many reasons. There are so many reasons why a product doesn't get to market. But you just have to persevere, and yeah, it took about 3 years for me to get the deal with Flush and Frenzy. And then yeah, I was lucky enough that it was kind of my, like with Phil, it was like my shake and go. It's kind of like it went, I mean, it was doing all right, but a lot of invention is sort of like that, and then after that it just went, yeah, it was crazy.
Crazy.
So I have a follow-up question. I'm going to go a little bit off script because I think this is really
Sure.
interesting. So you're talking about, you know, the peaks and valleys and sort of that emotional roller coaster that you go on as an independent inventor, and you don't have a team, you don't have a boss, you don't have a company that's backing you. So you're very exposed. And I think I appreciate that so much more now that I'm doing what I'm doing, sort of like you, out, you know, off the matrix. How do you find support and that emotional support and the encouragement? Do you connect with a few other independent inventors and you guys support each other? Like, how do you get that sense of, you know, support?
Yeah, I think you do have close confidants where you'll talk about stuff and how are things going. Oh well, not so great, or whatever. So there are a few people that you talk to, and they sort of like give you motivation or give you advice, or not, they don't have to be collaborators, but they're generally people that you just get on with really well. And there are some people that, you know, I tend to just ask, and if they say no, they say no. But like if you ask for advice from people who are successful, then if you're lucky enough to get a response and stuff, it does give you that motivation. And you do see, what kept me going is that you see the success that other people are having, and I tend to think if someone else can do it, I can do it. So like I could see it. There was tangible evidence of people doing it. So even when things were low, and there were some companies that said I could either do invention or design, freelance design or invention, and they said you've got to pick. And I kind of, even though at the time I needed the money to do the freelance design, I chose the invention route because I took the long-term view, and the long-term view is that invention, if you can get something good, it does pay off.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. How about you, Phil? You've been in this game for a while. How have you emotionally survived and not had a meltdown all these years?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of, you know, it's a great community of very competitive friends and associates in the business. But I would also say that, you know, besides the collaborators, and that's my model, is collaborating almost 100% with talented people. It is this great community of people that are generous with their time and advice, because I think that's one of the advantages of the bigger groups. It's in the moments of crisis, they can turn to each other and brainstorm and figure out how to deal with, you know, because there's a lot more to the business of inventing than just inventing, right? There's a lot of struggle on the business side of it. And so, you know, whether it's intellectual property or contracts or you know, crises within our Toyco partners that they bring forward or whatever. I mean, it's nice to turn around in the same studio and figure out that stuff out. I pick up the phone, and I've got a lot of buddies who are full of advice. So that's helped,
So it sounds like as a solo inventor, kind of having that trusted inner circle is really important, because you don't have a bigger support system.
It makes it possible, I'd say. Yeah, I don't think nobody's really a lone wolf. I mean, there are no lone wolf inventors. I don't believe that. I think invention usually comes through kind of misdirection and misunderstandings, and you find something new by bouncing it off other people. And so as a solo inventor, it's really that, it's the dynamic of at least one or two other people that usually get us to something new. That's at least historically, that's the way it's worked for me.
Very cool. Very insightful. Fee, you've been so quiet. We've left you out.
Hi.
Good. Tell us about you and how you got your start.
Yeah, sure. So my start, actually, I suppose it started off in the world of play. So my placement year way back when at uni was a playground designer, which was really fun. I didn't know that was even a real job, and it was really cool and fun. And it therefore gave my portfolio, I suppose, that kind of playful aspect, and really got me into the kids' world and designing for those kind of bigger experiences. And that then got me seen by a recruiter who was looking for portfolios online. Back then there was a site called monster.com where you could kind of load up your profile and recruiters would look for positions. And there happened to be a toy company that was, probably about 30 minutes from where I was going to then move back to living. And they wanted a junior product designer. So at that point, I hadn't really necessarily thought too much about the toy industry. And I didn't know at all how large it was, particularly from the UK size. I think I always had the assumption that it was very much US based and China as well, whereas I didn't realize there were so many kind of homegrown toy companies in the UK. And this one happened to be pretty big. They were Vivid UK, and they'd done everything from Thunderbirds, One Direction, Crayola, Fifi and the Flower Tots, and they had an amazing portfolio, and the founders were really incredible, very entrepreneurial. And we got to work on some amazing brands. So I started off there, and I was there for about a decade. And in between that, I had a bit of travel time. I worked for a few other companies. I did a bit of inventing with some invention studios. So that was great as well. And then I kind of got a little bit of time out from that company, and then they kindly had me back. And from there on, it progressed into a fantastic role. And I got to run the innovation hub, and became the principal creative. And that was my last in-house position before I left to start making things. So,
awesome. Great start. And how do you have did what we were talking about earlier, did it ring true for you that you have sort of that trusted inner circle that you bounce ideas off of, or when you hit a wall, do you have that support system?
Yeah, definitely, certainly. I think that the benefit actually of having had so long in-house, with a company that had such an eclectic portfolio, you built up quite a large network. So when I left to start making things, actually quite a lot of people prior to me who founded the company, who were in positions for a very long time there, themselves were going out on their own ventures. They were all getting to that point in their career where they wanted, I think, to own their own destiny a little bit more. So I had a support network of actually a lot of people that were my in-house mentors back at Vivid, who were also then doing their own businesses. Some were becoming inventor agents. So there was some access there that allowed me to really talk about the legal side of stuff. And I got to experience a little bit of that at Vivid as well. So I felt like I came armed with the information, and then, just built a friendship group through the years. You make really good friends in this industry. And actually all of the companies as well, once you're an external, I think are a part of the support network. A lot of them provide some really good feedback on concepts that you might feel like they haven't got a place to go. However, their feedback often makes you think, oh, actually, if I did that and that, maybe that's another opportunity for it.
Fee, I've got a question.
Yeah.
What was it like when because you worked as a designer at a toy company, what was it like when you left? With your network and your contacts and stuff? Because when I left, when you work for a toy company, it's obviously very secretive, everything's confidential, And so when you leave, when you're at the toy company, you don't really talk to that many external toy companies or people working at external toy companies because you can't.
Yeah.
But then you leave and then you can. So like it's funny for me, it was like your whole world opens up. And you get to, you know, see all these things in development in different toy companies, whereas before it was like very much like concentrated.
Oh yeah, I think that's one of the massive pros actually is even for example when you go to, you know, the toy fairs and you get to go and see other brands and other people's products, that was eye-opening, because before it was very much a case of if there was some companies that were kind of, you know, friends and they'd let people off and on, you got to experience what it felt like to be part of another company, walking around their stand, what's the vibe. Whereas, yeah, being an inventor, you get to pretty much have access to all of that. And again, I was pretty lucky. It seemed to be a thing with Vivid whereby, particularly the location it was at, and there was lots of other toy companies, lots of my really good friends just in personal life who I'd met through the toy industry then all worked and had left and started different positions in other companies. So that was something that was really good, because I could kind of, if I'd never met that company before, there was a way in. So I think I would have really struggled if I hadn't had that experience before to make the connections at the beginning, for sure.
Cool.
So let's talk more about that. So you started to tap into what are the advantages of being a solo inventor? So one of them obviously is exposure. You don't live in a bubble anymore, you know, within a certain company culture, restricted about who you can talk to and what you can see. What are some of the other advantages you feel being a solo bring you compared to someone in-house, and then also compared to inventors that are part of a bigger firm? So what is your edge and what are the advantages?
I'd say from my side, being solo, you have creative license for sure, which at the beginning, I think this can flip to sometimes also being a disadvantage. But at the beginning, the advantage is you can chase down something that, you know, kind of in your heart and mind you think is a really strong concept. Then I'd say the flip side to that is what you get from being in-house is you get that control factor. So you get to have particularly more of a say and a sway in what could make it through the business. Whereas as an inventor, you're very much on the other side of the table. You feel a little bit outside of that part of the business negotiations, as much as you'd love to get involved and go, but actually, well, if you're thinking that, what about if we did this and did that? And then all of those twists and turns that a concept makes through development, all of the things that can make it fall down. When you're in-house, you fix those and you problem solve. But as an inventor, you're kind of left on the outside a little bit often, which I think that can make it quite tough. You're sometimes
you have that entry point, you have that first, you have that first shot. Like you have to tell the whole story, and hopefully you're right, and it happens.
And hopefully it lands. And if it doesn't, you kind of don't necessarily have the opportunity to kind of go, I'm going to work on this bit over here and this bit, and then I'll show you other things.
And it takes a generous licensee to kind of work with you to say, oh, there's something here, let's work on that. And sometimes that happens, right? I mean, but oftentimes it's just like another rejection.
And I think a lot of companies are heading down that route, and I think a lot of them have some of the strongest concepts out there, and that's because of potentially the way that they are collaborating. It's quite a modern approach to the development, whereas maybe the more kind of old school approach is that some people see the inventor idea as it needs to be a slam dunk, completely finished, ready to go, because rightly so, it can expedite development for them. And
they're looking for reasons to say no, actually. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like taking something on is a challenge that, you know, it's got its own mountains to climb once they take it in.
I think you need an in-house champion of your concept, because if you don't, then I think whatever the concept is, it'll just get rejected. You really need someone who's gonna believe in it. And even if it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't matter what level of finish it is. If they believe in the idea, an idea is one of the strongest things in the world. If someone has an idea, it's kind of, and they believe in it, it's kind of unbreakable until it isn't. But like an idea and a champion is usually what gets it through to the end.
No question. So but the challenge is, like, I'd say an advantage I see, and this is, you can make the argument either way, is that the bigger groups are somewhat insular. I mean, they're turning around and riffing with each other every day. You could look at that as an advantage, but I see riffing with different people with different talents. I can, as a solo inventor,
outside of these micro bubbles.
Yeah, I can collaborate with a wider range. It's up to me, kind of. I get to, not that I get to choose, but my guys will come to me with a half-baked idea and we work on that, and then I turn around and I'm working with somebody else on something else that is also outside of my my organization. So I don't know, there's that, I think that's an advantage, that and I agree with you. It's the freedom to chase something that you may not within an organization. You may not chase some crazy idea, where I chase a lot of crazy ideas. Whatever is inspiring me that day. So that helps.
So I have another question about, so being solo and sort of, you have a finite amount of time and obviously capabilities, right? And prototyping is expensive to get to that proof of concept. And I think, just from my perspective, the bigger firms sort of have bigger capabilities. So how do you address that issue as a solo inventor, with collaboration? And is it, you're just placing your bets a lot more carefully, or you have a variety of people that you partner with that have those modeling capabilities? Like, is there any insight you have on that, and how you?
From my side, I do a bit of everything. I think the concepts that I think that I could get to a level that sells the idea in, and is enough that a toy company could take that on, without necessarily a full working prototype. I'd work on those as a priority, because there is probably about, I'd say, 60% of the companies that I would show to would take concepts on at that level. And the two concepts that I've placed have gone up to what I would say a rough prototype level. It visualizes the concept and gets people excited because there's something physical in front of them. But that physical prototype is a little bit smoke and mirrors. It's a bit Heath Robinson. It's not fully finished to the level. And that was actually a positive in the two things that I've signed, because it's allowed the companies, and they were the types of companies that wanted to have then the creative control on it, and they actually took it into quite different directions as well. So I think that ended up being a positive. And then the ideas that definitely do require a prototype, from my side, the skill set is very much kind of front end. So that back end, in terms of mechanisms and electronics, that's when I would partner with other collaborators.
And how do you find model makers? Because I mean, as I understand it, it's a very limited, specialized resource pool. How do you find those people?
Yeah, so we actually, again, it was through Vivid, where we built up a great supplier base of agencies, prototypers, model makers, sculptors. I can still lean on quite a few of those, and also the inventors as well that specialize in that type of inventing. So they are more focused on that end result, or they even start with, I've got this mechanism, what can we then do with it? So we kind of then backtrack and try and think, well, what if that was an IP brand, and think about it like that.
That's good thoughts. How about you, Phil or Adam? Capabilities, partnering, model capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, those are usually who I collaborate with, are talented people that can do the stuff I can't. I come from advertising. I'm a marketing guy, in my past. And so, yeah, it's the stuff that I can't do, that is, I do the business end of the business as well as the invention part, but I can't do rapid prototyping and programming. I can't do any of that stuff. And so, yeah, those partners are, they're harder to find, but they're the same. They're people from past collaborations and past work, over the years. And so, but I like those old machinists. There used to be like this network in the Bay Area. There used to be these older guys that had machine shops that we used to use, that have since kind of moved on out of the business or passed on. And so it's, the new generation of model makers are kind of, CAD jockeys, a lot of CAD jockey and a lot of 3D printing guys and I guess that's the evolution of the business. That it makes it easy to turn quick protos. And I'll still Frankenstein protos though. That's actually, I don't know if you guys do that, but I love getting back in the shop and hacking some bad first prototype just to see if there's anything fun there. That's kind of that's a quick prototyping is I think Brendan Boyle at IDEO talks about that. And I think it is one of those things that quick prototyping gives you just a hint of whether there's something there, early on.
Whether it's worth chasing or not.
Absolutely. Doesn't have to be pretty. Doesn't have to be pretty.
But for me, it's interesting because Trina, you said that I think the traditional view of a solo inventor is that they don't have the capabilities of a bigger invention house. And for me, it's a little bit annoying when that viewpoint, and I can completely understand that viewpoint, but and I've encountered it as well with toy companies where they just assume that you can't or haven't got the capabilities of one of the bigger thing. And for me, the limiting factor isn't the capabilities, it's the time, because as a solo inventor, you are doing everything. You're doing the accounting, you're doing the business side of it, you're doing negotiations, reading through the contracts, you're coming up with the ideas and maybe collaborating. But for me, and when you're presenting stuff, it can be the rough side of it, which like the white model, which is like just ABS plastic, super glued, like maybe a basic mechanism, elastic bands, whatever. Or you can do the fully 3D printed, looks like sculpted, CNC'd, perfectly working model. And there's two sides to it. But for me, like when I started, my capabilities were limited, definitely from a big invention house. But as I've gone on, I've sort of like tried to reinvest all my time and money back into it, so that my skills and capabilities are growing along with like a big invention house. Because I think what the advantage of big invention houses got usually, and the reason they stay in the game for so long, is because they do get a few big licenses that allows them the time to reinvest and develop their capabilities, and it lowers the risk a long way, because they're free to experiment and everything isn't all or nothing with them. Then it's like, okay, we've got a few things in the background, we can invest in equipment and grow our capabilities and take some shots that maybe we wouldn't be able to take otherwise.
Yeah, their cash flow is a lot more stable.
Yeah,
right. There's a lot more, right. They've built up security, right, which then provides you the time and the resources to explore. But so I think that's really important. So let's talk about what you feel that perception is, especially by the majors, that perception of being a solo inventor. Like, let's talk more about that. What you think those perceptions are they accurate? Are they not? And then what I really want to do is I want to use this conversation with you guys as solo inventors. Like, what can people do that are in a position of power to better support you? What are the things that you feel that they should be doing? So let's just backtrack. Let's talk about, what do you feel those perceptions are? So you hit on a few of them. Limited capabilities, right? Modeling.
Soup to nuts development. I mean, they can offer, full development resources because there's strength in numbers for sure.
Yeah, they're almost often, I think, seen as a product design agency, and they function almost to the level as someone that you would almost put out design for hire work to as well, but obviously on a royalty.
R&D, it's outhouse R&D. They provide those services. We can provide that, but there's an opportunity cost because we are, just the scale of our operations doesn't allow a lot of development work without a cost. Say it again, Adam.
Sorry. So if you like I said, it's time, isn't it? It's time with a solo inventor. But if you only need one project and to do it really well, and a solo inventor is enough, as long as you're doing the one project and you're doing it right and you're doing it well. You could do like 10 different projects with a big outside invention company, but if you're doing one good project, a good solo inventor is enough.
And hope it works and hope it flies. So
Yeah.
I mean, the spreading the bets, advantage of volume of they can divide and conquer the licensee prospects. They can see more people. I tend to try to concentrate more maybe on a dozen companies versus they can go see 30 or 40 or 50 companies because they've got the bodies to do that. I mean, that's an advantage, there's no question.
Yeah. So as a solo inventor, you have to pick your targets very, very carefully because
that's huge. Yeah.
I would say as well, in terms of kind of the tiers of toy companies, there's different potentially expectations in the way in which the teams work as well. So the kind of the medium tier toy companies, I think they tend to be even more open to solo inventors potentially, just more in a sort of a positive collaborative type of way, because they want that extra resource added into their design team, but they're also fairly agile and still at that kind of entrepreneurial state that they're willing to kind of take a bit of a punt and go, well, how about if we work it this way? That's a little bit different than we've done it before with inventors, but let's have a go. So whereas I think potentially the top tier businesses, obviously where they have their models in place, you kind of have to just fit a little bit more into how they work, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This whole thing
is the scale. Just one thing I would say on the scale of the bigger groups, and we all know who they are, and the smaller groups is how many things they have to place a year to make their model work. I mean, a lot of them do have built up ongoing revenue streams for sure, but I mean, the scale of their operations puts pressure on them that we don't have. I mean, I have to place probably a quarter of the things that they need to place annually to even make my model work. My burn rate is just, practically nothing. They've got a lot of people underfoot to keep it busy. It's just a different model. I mean, there's advantages to both, but I like being solo that way.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. So before we talked about the things that inspired you to do this was freedom, right? Creative freedom, control, being able to pick the things that you believed in. And I think there's truth to that is the bigger that you get, the more overhead that you get, the more commitment that you have. And then you start to take less risks. You start to be less, sort of out there. So I see a huge benefit of solo inventing and being as exposed and vulnerable as solo inventors are, is that that something that you bring is something that you genuinely believe in. You're not casting, 50 shots out. There's one that you really believe in. And you can be, more creative and have more flexibility. So I just through talking through this, I see that as an edge.
I think that's why toy companies need inventors. Toy companies are big, huge machines, and everyone has to make sure that they hit the deadlines. And they've got say a retailer has got a space for a certain line. And so, okay, here's an opportunity. Let's try and hit it. Whereas a solo inventor goes, this is a great idea. This would be a fantastic toy or game. I'm going to just create it. And I think this is what consumers will want. Whereas the toy companies, sometimes it's like, they're looking at a spreadsheet and going, we need to hit this by this deadline. And all that time pressure can mean that maybe you innovate or have to innovate less, or you get less time to innovate because you just don't have the time. Whereas an inventor, I've spent 6 months on exploring a good idea, making sure that the idea was right, rather than going. So like if there's a big toy fair coming up, and I've got a certain amount of things to show, do I prioritize my new idea that I really believe in, but rush it, or do I save it for the next one? And I try to save it, because if a good idea doesn't come along as often as you think, so like, and one that's you think is a real winner, it's better to incubate it and work on it and make sure it's really good, rather than rush it through, because usually rushing it through doesn't end well and results in a compromised product.
Yeah. So I think it's, I know a lot of toy companies, they need a mix of inventor types, right? And everybody's different. The firms have advantages. Solo inventing definitely has advantages. And, you know, they need all of it, right? All different types of thinking and inventing. That's why they use external. What, if anything, do you feel inventor relations people or companies can do to better support solo inventors? What can help you be better? What can help you find success? What would you ask them for?
I would say the most critical thing, I think actually both for the inventor and the company, to help both parties in kind of the relationship, is feedback. Even a one-liner, if possible, because, and I think this is maybe something that is the bit I struggle with the most, being on the other side of the table, because when you're on the other side of the table, and I know how it worked, I know that, for example, if I hadn't provided feedback, or we hadn't as a team reviewed the inventor item, seen if we can convert it into something, is there a gap in the portfolio, and I hadn't got back to my manager or my boss who happened to have that relationship with that inventor, then there would be some issues, some conversations to be had. So I sometimes, and this, you know, 60 to 80% of all the toy companies do provide feedback, but I think when it's just purely a pass, I think it just means that the next concept could potentially suffer, because you aren't then able to align the next concept to their feedback, and you're in the dark essentially of whether anything about that concept was right that they've rejected, whether actually it was the whole category they're not interested in. They've seen that idea before. So yeah, I value and appreciate so much the companies that take the time to provide, even if it's a one-liner. And some companies provide so much more than that. They'll obviously provide live feedback during a pitch, or they'll provide a full paragraph synopsis as to why, but also, how about, it's not for us, but I really like it, you should show it to these guys. And there's some lovely, really fair relationships going on there as well.
There's nice ways to say no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. And I think there are generous inventor liaisons. They're generous people within those toy organizations that I agree that you value their feedback. They make your idea better in the pitch. That's wow, what a concept to help them sell it internally. That's actually, that's a trust and collaborative relationship that, those are the best relationships with the toy companies. And, it's not across the board, I'd say. It's company to company, and, it definitely helps. And actually at the front end, everybody gives wish lists. Not everybody. They give there is either, a very sparse wish list, no wish list, or then there are more generous kind of insight, like marketing insight wish lists, which, I never invent to a wish list, but at least it gives you, as a partner, as an invention partner, you're an outhouse R&D partner to these companies. That kind of input, whether you're a big firm or a little firm, it's really helpful. I mean, it does keep you from going down too many dark alleys, too many blind alleys. So,
yeah. I think for me, what I'd like big companies to do, sometimes they come to you with a development budget and they've got an idea and they say, we want you to work on this. This is real wishful thinking, but I'd like them to just say, here's carte blanche, just make whatever you want, we'll fund it, and we'll give you a royalty on it. Doesn't really happen.
It doesn't happen, Adam.
Never say never. Maybe they can sponsor a handful of people to just do some exploratory development.
I'd love that. And I think they'd come up with really, really good stuff. So usually it's like, here's a market opportunity, or here's this, or here's that. I think just give me a load of money and I'll make something really cool. That's what I want.
Adam, you are destined for greatness. That much is clear. That's great. So I heard just the feedback, the level of feedback that they give you. And I know just from, I sit on the other side of the fence, and I'm the one that's sitting in the room trying to get the feedback from the people that you want it from.
What's that like?
And what's that? Well, I think as IR, and I get in trouble for speaking candidly all the time, but that's one of the great things about being my own boss now. I get to say what I want. But it is, you're, as someone that's facilitating the review of sometimes, 30, 50 concepts in one sitting, and I'm trying to get as much insight into their thinking. Sometimes it's like, they're just not responding. They're not feeling it, and they can't articulate what it is. It's just not resonating, and I can see it. And as opposed to like, okay, well, what is it? What is it not? It's like, I have to move on. But then, there are some concepts where there's something there, and you can tell they're responding to it as a toy person, but it's just not for their team. It's not for their, so I think that IR can do a much better job. And what's interesting is, doing something with Universal, and now I'm sort of dealing with past myself. And it's like, geez, I kind of wish that I knew a little bit more why. And I would almost prefer to know why, like, we just didn't like it. It just wasn't exciting. Then just say that. Like, it's very
difficult. Yeah, it's very difficult. It's a lot of psychology involved with trying to work out why someone doesn't like something. And I think it's very difficult. And I think it's a good thing that you're trying to explore it and nail down this feedback, because it's extremely important to an inventor. It's vital. I think good feedback is vital, but it's so difficult to get.
It is. And from our perspective, it's hard because I know that I want to give meaningful insight and feedback, but then there's the other end where I don't want to send anybody on a wild goose chase, right? That I know that it's just not resonating. So it's a balance of, you want to be positive, you want to give them encouragement, but you don't want, because we have to respect your time. We know how valuable your time is. So it really is a balance. But I think if, inventors could make IR people just feel a lot more safe in giving you super honest, candid feedback, it would open that line of communication,
They really hated it. They really hated it.
They really, somebody threw up. They threw up.
They threw up. Yeah. No, I mean,
I'd love that. I think that would be really good.
I think that'd be honest, right? Brutal honesty. So Trina, like you're in those pitch meetings and you're running through like 30 sizzles, and it's like the things that make them uncomfortable are the ones that I'm curious about. It's like the ones that make they're not sure, they've seen it before. It's kind of weird. I mean, those are actually usually where there's gold. I mean, it's the ones that are not, wow, this is too familiar, is pretty common, like, or I've seen it or whatever. But if it's something weird and it goes through some side door that never even.
Like, what do we do with this one? That kind of.
It's always like
that should be our job.
That's what Mattel thought in my Flush and Frenzy, I think.
I expect so.
We're so, and it's so true. They're so appalled. If somebody cusses in the meeting in response to your concept, I know that it's hit a nerve, right? Or it's like, what the heck? Like, what is that? Or there's laughing, or there's some type of response to it. You know that you've
emotional reaction, right? Emotional reaction. Yeah. Good. No reaction.
Do you find you ever get a little bit of almost concept fatigue? So if depending on, I don't know, the time or day, and you've gone through so many different sizzles with people, if you've caught that team at maybe just the wrong time, do you find the response can sometimes be, wow, how many more have we got to get through today? Because this is a lot to take in and absorb.
I've been doing this a while, and I've tried every type of format you can imagine. Grouping it by categories, doing it by specialized team. I think the things that make concept review on our end successful is getting into the habit, getting into the routine, so you're never sort of overwhelmed by a volume of things. Giving safety and a comfort level to the people that I'm in the room with, and sort of, I think that what makes it productive is they feel safe with me and they can be honest, right? So that makes it good. But I'd say that the max limit that you can really get through is maybe 30 to, I'd say 30 concepts. And then people start to zone out, which is, why that format is so important, to have that super tight sizzle that's just like a 30-second get right to the magic moment to grab their attention, is really important.
Do you think it's important to be at the front or the back of the concept line?
I think it like in the order of concept review.
Yeah. Does it matter?
I will typically put the things that I believe have relevance to that team at the beginning. So I do that intentionally when they're fresh and they're in, right.
Yeah. You're looking at the business and trying to figure out what they're going to respond positively to. I mean, you know their business, right? Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, it's as best as I can. Even IR people, we face a lot of the same challenges that you do, is that we're trying to sort of like embed ourselves into the team and understand like what's the moving target, what changed, what is the team working on, where I mean, it's a constant, that is a daily dialogue, right? So we have some of the, but yes, we're closer. And if I know that there's an immediate need, I will put those types of items right at the top because I know they need those urgently. But yeah, those are good questions. Yay, I'm in the panel. So what else should we talk about? One thing I wanted to that stuck out in my mind is that, Adam, you mentioned when you were starting out, some companies force you to make a decision between doing vendor work and then working as an inventor. So, which is really, for me, really unfortunate, because we talk about the next generation of inventing, right? We talk about there's probably going to be a couple years runway to get success and then be able to have some security to keep going. There's a transition time that a lot of people might not have, the emotional fortitude to work through. So, it's just really unfortunate that, and it's the majors that force that decision a lot of time. And what they do is they prevent people from going down this path of independent inventing. So,
I think at the end of the day, toy companies don't want to genuinely. Some do, but if it was a perfect world, a toy company would just develop everything internally. So I don't think a lot of them particularly want inventors and to pay a royalty, but because why would they? Why keep that percentage? I mean, of course. I think some do encourage it, and it's not many toy companies do make you choose, and some even don't enforce it that strictly. The reason they do it is it's a good reason, really, is because they don't want to cross their internal design team with the inventor, because if the design team came up with it independently, they need to let them know. Whereas if the inventor's working with the design team, it crosses, and they might say something or work on something that's similar, and then it's sort of like legally it's sort of a little bit weird.
That is the rub, though. That, I mean, you want that cross pollination, but it's the problem.
Yeah, I think toy companies get worried by it.
I found the opposite, actually. I think I've just been lucky with those that I've got to work with on kind of both sides, but actually the majority of what I do, I'm probably 60% consulting, 40% inventing, kind of capacity wise, which is always a shame on inventing, because it means I often can never meet the amount of wish lists and briefs that are coming through. There's so much opportunity there, but with the consulting, it's part of what I love to do as well, and it keeps me involved with teams across a wide range of different companies. And of those companies, actually, they would never have an issue with me submitting them a concept. Obviously, if there was anything conflicting in there, it would be an issue, but there never would be. So anything that I'm used for in terms of consulting or workshops, that type of stuff, or paid for hire ideation, all of that seems to be pretty welcomed. And I think that's because potentially with an invention idea, then there's a potential way to move that forward in a bit of a different approach, rather than the traditional invention where you potentially sign the deal and then that's it, inventor goes away until the samples come to them. It's a bit more of an open dialogue in terms of, right, actually, should we have a brainstorm on what potentially could be year 2 line plan for this concept and things like that?
Yeah, I think it boils down to trust at the end of the day. And there are some companies that are, you know, unless you've been working with them for a very long time, they're wary. And then you prove trust in drops, don't you? So like you work with them, you don't litigate all the time. I think a lot of amateur inventors, they get very precious and they have one idea and they want to fight all the time, and they want to fight for their idea, but they want to fight against people for their idea, and it's dangerous to do that. The success, I think, comes from the mutual trust between the company and the inventor, and I think that's where you get the most success.
Absolutely agree with that. I know, coming from the IR perspective, we so badly want to engage with novice inventors and people that are interested. It's really hard because they're always operating from a fear place, because they don't understand the business model. They don't understand yet that NDA, concept submission form, the thing that's going to protect you more than any form is the relationship that you have with that company. That will serve you and protect you more than anything else. So I absolutely.
We basically sign a release. We sign a release when we submit. I mean, that's honestly, unless you have a patent or intellectual property, that's the conceit of the business, right? It's this, like, we all work together on some level, and I agree with Adam that it's a trust business, and it goes both directions.
And so I think that's so very rare. I think that, I mean, everyone always says it, that the toy and games industry, potentially like gifting and entertainment as well, in terms of ownable IP, is kind of one of the only industries where you can go, this is my concept, this is my copyright, and I'm releasing this to share with you. But actually, there is no patent necessarily involved in a lot of cases. Whereas in other industries, you'd need that before anyone would even let you through the door.
Which I used to try to sell, like kitchenwares. I would go to the hardware show. A million years ago, I was doing, like, helping individual inventors with ideas. They're one idea usually. And unless you had a patent, you couldn't go sell a new tea maker to Borton, or like, you needed a patent. I mean, it's just our industry. It's helpful to have. It doesn't hurt. From a competitive standpoint for your licensee, but it's not a requirement. It's never been.
Absolutely.
Just on patents, I think patents have been their importance in terms of. I mean, if you got a patent, great. You'll spend a lot of money to get it and a lot of time, but it's only as valuable as whether you're willing to defend it if someone breaches it. If you don't defend it, then a patent is pointless, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of money and time to do that. So you've got to be very, very careful if you're getting a patent. Very, very careful.
Yeah, my take on patents, and this is always anytime I'm engaging with a new inventor, is they think that they have to have that patent application and everything. Toy inventors work ahead of that curve. 1, 2, if you do license it, the company you license it to will likely pay for that patent. You'll be the inventor. Their patent counsel is probably going to be a lot better than any solo person can source and fund, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, it just comes communicating that so they understand, and it's the trust in the relationship, right?
Yes.
That's the hardest thing I know, at least in my job, to communicate people, to get them inspired in inventing.
Yep.
Trust, man, not going to steal your soul.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you want to talk about on your end?
I'd say as solo invention is a balance. I think you're always juggling, like everything's always up in the air all at the same time, and the most important thing is constantly learning and constantly applying the theory of people. When people who know what they're doing give you good advice, you should listen to it often. And I think the balance, like we were talking about, the freelance versus the invention, don't be too busy, I'd say, because if you make yourself too busy, then you're reducing your chances to innovate and have time to develop inventions, if you're always doing freelance, a lot of the people that I've hired to do freelance work for me, you know, they're always doing freelance work. They're always doing freelance work. And they say, I just don't have the time. Well, make the time. You know, like Fee was saying, her split is currently, did you say 40, 60?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yeah.
So she's given herself that window of opportunity there. Whereas other freelancers only give themselves 5% or whatever. And so yeah, you are reducing your income in terms of the freelance, but then you're thinking longer term and you're giving yourself more of an opportunity to get the licenses. So you do have to both work hard but also work smart, I think.
The thing that actually obviously that's happened recently with COVID, it massively changed that ratio. For the last 3 months I was able, because a lot of actually the consulting work dropped out, particularly where you're running a workshop with 20 people in the same space, trying to find a location that's inspiring and exciting that are all shut. It was never going to happen for months and months. So a lot of that work stopped, which then gave me capacity to invent more. So I've probably outputted more during lockdown actually than I ever would have.
The upside of the downside.
Yeah, a very strange upside. But I was going to say actually with that whole situation, my favorite thing of this career is sharing ideas, and with that comes like meeting people, and often that is so much better obviously when it's face to face. And I absolutely love pitch events and trade shows. One, you get to catch up with all your old friends, but you get to meet new people, and seeing their reaction physically, an emotive response to an idea, or someone who's pulled into your vision, there's like no better kind of feeling than that. And I do hope, you know, none of us know what the next 6 months, 12 months is going to look like. We don't know. But
nobody knows. Yeah.
No, I hope that we do get to a point where we can all do that again, because there's just something that is different in virtual pitching. It obviously it's happened way before all of this, because a lot of the companies are spread around the globe, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree about the importance of the in-person meetings. Okay, it's expensive to get to these places and pay for it and stay somewhere, but it really is. You get so many things out of it. I 110% recommend in person over virtual, but obviously we don't have a choice at the moment. But yeah.
So back to the advantages of being a solo inventor. I mean, one thing that I'd say is this idea of making up your day. You get to make up your day as a solo inventor. I've been present in my kids' lives in ways that I would have never been if I had, I could have stayed at KID, I imagine, and worked it out and been there because it was great, a great group and a lot of fun. But being in the neighborhood and being around for the kids has been one of the biggest bonuses of just making my model work. And I've been able to be at a lot of events that I would have never been to in schools and all the stuff that happens when kids grow up. So I got that. And then at the end of the day, it's still the sizzle. We're as individual inventors, we may not have as many ideas. Maybe we do, but it's those sizzles that, it comes down to like, how good is your pitch? How good is your idea? We just have to be a little better, a little smarter, a little more resilient than the big firms. And I like the David versus Goliath thing. I really do. I think that actually has always kind of driven me. It's like, wow, they've got so many resources, so they can do so much, and yet, we can still close a deal. We can still, it's like, what do you show up with on what day, in what form? And that's what keeps us coming back.
Absolutely. Well, that was really fun. Thank you. What's that? Yeah. Did you was it good? Like it was.
Oh, I was just like.
It was good.
I think that was really fun. It was insightful to talk about this like openly and candidly and get more insight kind of into your worlds. And I hope this, at least anybody watching that's in a position to better support these solo inventors, will think about ways that they can do so. And special thanks to Mojo for pulling this all together and really creating these platforms. Mojo is so awesome because what they're doing is they're giving you all a platform really to tell your story and connect with each other and connect with the industry that you obviously work so hard for. So thank you
Yeah,
guys
it's great.
for doing
It's
this.
great. Yeah.
Thank you, Trina.
Great.
And thank you, Trina.
You're welcome. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.